The galaxy was a place of order, cataloging, and meticulous calculation. Every planet, every asteroid, every fragment of mineral that shimmered in the void was recorded, classified, and studied. Species across hundreds of star systems had learned the value of predictability, of knowing exactly what resources were safe to mine, what energies were stable, and what anomalies were to be feared. From the gleaming halls of the Celery Citadels to the drilling rigs orbiting the crimson deserts of Drathia Prime, there existed a universal respect for caution. It was within this framework of cosmic bureaucracy and interstellar caution that the Interstellar Council released its latest report, a document that would send a shiver through every scientific and mining institution in the galaxy. The report was stark, precise, and unyielding in its conclusions. 222 crystals, previously considered minor anomalies, were classified as unstable, dangerous, volatile, unpredictable. Any attempt to transport, experiment on, or utilize these crystals was now forbidden under penalty of heavy fines, trade restrictions, and even planetary quarantine. Ships carrying them were to be grounded, entire colonies could be cordoned off, and interstellar traders were ordered to avoid any contact. Most species obeyed without question. The Drathians, whose entire economy revolved around mining and refining minerals, left their minds untouched, content to abandon the veins that promised wealth for the sake of safety. They had learned over centuries that the universe had a way of punishing greed. The Solari, meticulous and cautious to a fault, encased their crystals in layers of containment fields, observing them only from afar, cataloging their unpredictable emissions without daring to touch them. Even the humans' trading partners, the rarely cautious and often pragmatic Terrans of the Orion Fringe, stepped lightly around the forbidden shards, murmuring warnings about catastrophic energy releases that could level entire settlements. Every species, that is, except the humans. On the fringe planet of Tarsus, a rocky world, in the outer Orlon Belt, a small human mining colony named Nova Haven bustled with life. Unlike the tightly regimented, bureaucratically perfect colonies of the Drathians or the silent, efficient settlements of the Solari, Nova Haven thrived on chaos, curiosity, and a near-obsessive drive to tinker. The colony was a tangle of metal scaffolding, solar arrays, and exhaust vents. Drones buzzed overhead. Miners carried glowing plasma cutters across asteroid fragments, and the air was filled with the faint hum of power cells and the occasional metallic clang echoing from deep within the tunnels. It was here, amid the dust, hum, and clamor, that Mara Quinn first encountered the crystals. She was a young metallurgist, bright-eyed and driven by an unquenchable curiosity that often led her to disregard warnings from superiors. To her, the universe was a puzzle, and every forbidden piece was an invitation. When a shipment of the 222 newly classified unstable crystals arrived, she didn't see danger. She saw mystery. Mara's first impression was visual. The crystals were small, jagged, and irregular, as if nature had thrown shards of starlight into existence in a moment of cosmic whimsy. Their colors shifted subtly in the dim lights of the Nova Haven processing lab, sometimes a deep, iridescent purple, sometimes a fiery amber, sometimes the green of a forest moon glimmering faintly beneath a dust storm. But it wasn't just their appearance that captivated her. When she held one in her hand, Mara noticed something extraordinary, a vibration. It was faint, barely perceptible, but there. Not dangerous, not painful, just resonant. A subtle hum that seemed almost musical. She passed it to her assistant, a small multifunctional drone she had nicknamed Kip, and Kip's sensors recorded fluctuations in energy emission, unlike anything previously documented. "They hum," Mara said aloud, the words barely above a whisper. "Not violently, not dangerously, beautifully, like they're singing." Her observation went against everything the council had warned. Dangerous, volatile, unstable. That was the decree, repeated countless times across galactic news networks, in data streams to every colony, every university, every research lab. The council's classification had made the crystals untouchable. Any interaction was considered reckless, a direct violation of interstellar law. Yet Mara felt an undeniable pull. The hum of the crystals wasn't a warning, it was a challenge, a question, a puzzle. She set to work immediately, though quietly. Nova Haven's laboratory was not equipped for high-security containment, but Mara's ingenuity was fueled by necessity. She began experimenting in ways that no human or any other species had dared. Adjusting the angle at which the crystals were cut, pairing them with different alloys, testing their reactions to energy fields, Mara noted subtle changes. The crystal's vibrations could be channeled, tempered, even amplified in controlled conditions. She spent hours holding them, studying their resonance patterns, comparing them to musical harmonics, and mapping the faint magnetic fluctuations they emitted. While other species treated the crystals like ticking bombs, humans were doing something new. They were listening, learning, understanding. And in that understanding, Mara began to glimpse the potential. These unstable, forbidden shards could be more than raw energy. They could be art. They could be beauty. Little did the galaxy know, the first spark of human ingenuity was already alight. In the dusty, humming laboratories of Nova Haven, a young human metallurgist had begun to rewrite the rules of interstellar caution. Where others saw danger, she saw resonance. Where others saw instability, she saw possibility. And the crystals, for all their classified volatility, seemed to hum in agreement. Mara Quinn's fascination with the crystals quickly evolved into obsession. Days blurred into nights as she worked in the humming labs of Nova Haven, her hands stained with metallic dust, her eyes scanning every minute fluctuation of energy. Where other species would have stopped at observation, where caution would have ruled, Mara pushed further, testing the limits of what the Council had deemed forbidden. She was, in every sense, the embodiment of the human spirit, curious, relentless, and unafraid to confront danger head-on. Her first breakthrough came almost by accident. While experimenting with a set of jagged amber crystals, she paired one with a slender lattice of a rare alloy humans had synthesized from deep-core asteroids. The alloy was light, strong, and capable of conducting energy in precise patterns. As she held the paired structures near a microresonator, the jagged crystal began to vibrate more harmoniously. The once violent energy pulses calmed, settling into a pattern that seemed almost deliberate. Mara's heart raced. She had always understood instability as chaos, but what if chaos could be tamed? What if it wasn't a weapon, but a medium? She began to refine her method, cutting the crystals into thin, intricate facets that reflected light in fractal patterns. She combined them with metals that complemented their natural frequencies, creating tiny, resonating chambers. Each cut, each alloy choice, each vibration study brought the crystals closer to harmony. The hums, once random and dissonant, began to form patterns soft, melodic, and faintly hypnotic. By the end of the first week, Mara had created the first truly human innovation from the 222 classified unstable crystals, jewelry. It was not merely adornment, but an expression of resonance and subtle energy manipulation. She fashioned necklaces that glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythm that seemed attuned to the wearer's heartbeat. Bracelets shimmered with miniature harmonics, vibrating softly when the wearer moved, as if the crystal itself were alive. Earrings, delicate and precise, emitted soft, imperceptible musical notes that seemed to whisper to the mind, touching thoughts and emotions in ways no sensor could measure. Kip, her loyal drone assistant, watched silently as Mara demonstrated her creations. The drone's visual sensors captured the shifting glimmers, while its auditory arrays attempted to measure the faint harmonics. Even Kip seemed to pause in acknowledgement. This was not merely experimentation. This was creation. Mara's secret spread quietly among the humans of Nova Haven. At first, only a few colleagues were aware, drawn into her lab by curiosity and the quiet insistence that humans had always possessed. If the galaxy deemed it impossible, it was an invitation. Soon, more miners and engineers requested to see her work. The crystals, once feared as destructive, had become mesmerizing objects of fascination. Hands that had mined asteroids and repaired power cores now trembled in awe as they held shards that vibrated with life. And yet, the humans did not fear them. They had learned something other species had not. Instability was not always destructive. It could be guided. It could be channeled. In the hands of a human, chaos could become art. For the humans, the jewelry was more than beauty. It was a statement. It was defiance in the face of rigid rules, proof that the galaxy's classifications were not absolute. The Council had deemed these crystals dangerous, yet here they were, transformed into objects of wonder. It was a subtle but unmistakable declaration. Humans could take what others feared and turn it into something entirely new. But the galaxy was not blind. The energy readings from Mara's lab began to show up on scanners far beyond Tarsus IV. Nearby colonies noted fluctuations, minor but unusual, and whispers of human experiments traveled quickly across communication channels. Other species, rigid and cautious, were stunned. They could not comprehend how anyone could approach the crystals without protective exosuits, containment fields, and endless protocols. And yet the humans were not only surviving, they were thriving. Mara herself became aware of the stakes. Each day, she reminded herself of the Council's decree: 222 crystals classified as unstable, dangerous, volatile. Yet she saw the truth hidden behind the warnings. To humans, danger was not a deterrent. It was a challenge, a canvas on which to paint brilliance. The breakthrough crystallized one evening when Mara placed a small, polished amber crystal in a pendant setting. She held it to her chest, and for the first time, she noticed the subtle interaction with her own heartbeat. The crystal pulsed in harmony with her rhythm, a luminous echo of her life force. The necklace glimmered like a miniature sun, casting tiny prismatic patterns across the lab walls. It was alive, responsive, beautiful. She realized, with a thrill that made her chest tighten, that humans had achieved something no other species had. The crystals, forbidden and feared, were no longer purely energy anomalies. They had become conduits of expression, instruments of resonance, art that could sing. Humans had taken chaos and given it form, uncertainty and made it purpose, fear, and turned it into wonder. Mara held the pendant high, letting its faint harmonics fill the lab. She whispered to Kip, almost reverently, "We can do this. We can make them sing, and not just here, anywhere." The news of human experimentation with the unstable crystals traveled faster than Mara had anticipated. What began as subtle energy fluctuations detected by orbital scanners soon became whispers among neighboring colonies, then reports, and finally, formal complaints. The Interstellar Council, always meticulous about adherence to classification laws, could not ignore the anomaly. A special envoy was dispatched from the High Hall of the Council, a delegation of the galaxy's most respected scientists and regulators, their arrival heralded by formal transmission, warnings, and the cold certainty of legal authority. The humans of Nova Haven, however, had never been known for obedience. By the time the envoys materialized in orbit, Mara's creations were already being worn across the colony. Her workshops had transformed into showrooms where miners, engineers, and even children displayed pendants that pulsed with soft light, bracelets that hummed faint harmonics, and earrings that whispered music only the mind could perceive. The unstable crystals were no longer objects of fear, they were objects of awe. When the first council envoys landed, they were met not with fear or submission, but with confident curiosity. Mara stood before them, her lab a dazzling display of glowing shards, metallic lattices, and tiny resonators. Each crystal vibrated in subtle harmony with its wearer, reflecting light in colors and patterns that defied any conventional analysis. "We are aware of your experiments," the lead envoy said, his voice crisp and formal, carrying the authority of countless star systems. "You are in violation of multiple council decrees. These crystals are classified as unstable. Handling them without containment protocols is strictly prohibited. Your actions endanger not only this colony, but the entire Orlon sector." Mara smiled, calm and unflinching. "Danger is relative," she replied. "To you, perhaps. To us, it is an invitation. These crystals do not explode. They do not annihilate. They respond to resonance, to form, to intention. We are not harming them, and we are not harming ourselves. We are creating." The envoys exchanged uneasy glances. Among their meticulously trained logic circuits and neural interfaces, no scenario had accounted for such human audacity. The Council's strict regulations were based on centuries of data on accidents, explosions, even minor planetary disasters caused by mishandled crystals. And yet, the humans stood before them, demonstrating a complete mastery of what the galaxy had deemed uncontrollable. Mara lifted a pendant from her workstation, a small amber-hued crystal set in a delicate lattice of human-forged alloy. As she held it near her heart, the crystal pulsed in perfect synchrony with her heartbeat, casting fractal lights across the lab walls. She gestured, and the harmonics responded, changing tone and rhythm as if the crystal itself were conversing with her. "This is not instability," she said softly. "This is expression. This is resonance. It is not chaos. It is creation." One of the envoys, a celery scientist with eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian, stepped forward. "You have stabilized them? Through what mechanism?" Mara simply shook her head. "Not stabilized. Guided, tempered. Every crystal has a pattern, a frequency. You only need to listen." For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the crystals, soft, and melodic, almost imperceptible to those not attuned. The envoys felt it, some involuntarily. It was subtle, like the vibration of a distant star passing through space-time. Some of them recoiled slightly, startled by the raw energy they could feel but not comprehend. Others were mesmerized, unable to look away as the crystals shimmered, danced, and pulsed in perfect harmony with their human bearers. And the humans continued to demonstrate. Bracelets resonated with gestures, sending tiny vibrations across the skin. Necklaces glowed softly, adjusting to the subtle changes in heartbeat and blood flow. Earrings whispered harmonics that seemed to echo inside the mind itself. What the council had classified as dangerous, volatile, and uncontrollable had been transformed. In the hands of humans, the crystals were no longer threats, they were instruments of art and emotion, alive in ways the galaxy had never encountered. The envoys struggled to maintain composure. Their formal reports could not account for this. Logic circuits, simulation programs, and historical data all screamed warning, but the empirical evidence before them was undeniable. Humans had turned forbidden, unstable energy into something entirely new, something entirely beautiful. We will have to report this," one of the envoys stammered, voice tight with disbelief. "This is unprecedented. Such handling is unimaginable." Mara's eyes sparkled. "Then report it. But know this, by the time your reports reach the council, the humans of Nova Haven will have already moved forward. These crystals sing because we listened. We did not fear them. And that is what you cannot calculate." The envoys departed with a mixture of awe, apprehension, and unease. Nova Haven remained, as always, humming, buzzing, and alive with human ingenuity. Across the colony, the humans wore their creations proudly, indifferent to the formal warnings, knowing that what they had achieved was something no other species had attempted or dared to attempt. For the first time, the galaxy had a tangible proof that humans approached danger differently than all other species. Where the Drathians saw catastrophe, humans saw curiosity. Where the Celerai saw instability, humans saw opportunity. And where the Council saw forbidden energy, humans saw beauty. The story of the 222 unstable crystals was no longer one of caution and fear. It was a story of defiance, creativity, and a species that refused to be constrained by the rules of the past. The humans of Nova Haven had not only broken the rules, they had rewritten the possibilities. And somewhere, deep within the hum of the crystals, there was a quiet acknowledgement, a recognition that in human hands, the galaxy's fears could be transformed into something entirely new, something unimaginable, and something undeniably human. The aftermath of the Council's visit rippled across Nova Haven like a shockwave of tension and anticipation. Whispers of human audacity had already reached every corner of the galaxy. In the hushed corridors of interstellar communication hubs, species that had once scoffed at human recklessness now debated in disbelief. Reports streamed in. Humans had not merely handled the unstable crystals, they had transformed them. And what they had created was beautiful. Back on Tarsus, Ivy Mara Quinn and her team continued their work, undeterred by the Council's formal warnings. The humans of Nova Haven, as always, moved with a quiet confidence born of curiosity and experience. They understood something no other species had yet grasped. Danger was not a wall to avoid, but a material to shape. The crystals, humming softly in their labs, pulsed in harmony, with the people who dared to approach them. They were alive, in a sense, responding not to commands, but to intent. The Interstellar Council convened emergency sessions, summoning scientific committees, ethical advisors, and political envoys from every member species. The question was simple, yet monumental. How should the galaxy respond to humans? Reports were sent from the frontier systems, detailing the subtle harmonics of the jewelry, the glowing lights, the responsive energy patterns. The evidence was irrefutable. Humans had succeeded where centuries of caution had failed. Debates raged in the council chambers. One faction, representing the cautious Drathians and conservative Sulari, demanded immediate sanctions. These crystals are classified for a reason, they argued. Unstable energy is not a toy. One miscalculation could obliterate a colony, destabilize an orbit, or worse. Allowing humans to handle them sets a precedent that cannot be ignored. Another faction, surprisingly led by several younger species from the fringe sectors, countered with a note of awe and curiosity. These humans have demonstrated something remarkable, they said. They have taken what is considered chaos and transformed it into creation. This is not recklessness. This is ingenuity. Perhaps we should learn from them. For the humans, these debates were largely irrelevant. Nova Haven continued to hum, literally and figuratively, with the energy of discovery. The crystals, now integrated into necklaces, bracelets, and earrings, pulsed in rhythm with human emotions. A worker, raising her arm to repair a mining rig, caused the bracelet on her wrist to emit a soft, harmonic chime. A child turning in excitement made the pendant on her neck shimmer with an ethereal glow. The unstable had become interactive, responsive, and beautiful. It was not long before the first formal acknowledgement came. A neutral faction within the council proposed a compromise. Humans could handle the 222 unstable crystals, but only for artistic and experimental purposes, under careful observation. No weapons, no commercial trade, no mass export. The proposal was controversial, but when the council representatives visited Nova Haven to witness the crystals firsthand, the evidence was undeniable. The humans had done what no other species could. Mara demonstrated a necklace, holding it to her chest as it pulsed in perfect rhythm with her heartbeat. She gestured, and the crystal responded, shifting its glow, changing its resonance, almost as if it were listening and responding to her intent. The envoys could not help but be captivated, though many would not admit it openly. The unstable crystals, once feared as instruments of destruction, were now tools of expression, proof that humans could manipulate energy in ways that defied conventional physics. Word of the compromise spread across the galaxy, reaching distant colonies and trade hubs. Humans were no longer merely a species to tolerate. They were a species to watch. Their reputation for recklessness had transformed into a reputation for audacity, creativity, and ingenuity. Where others saw danger, humans saw opportunity. Where others saw chaos, humans saw potential. And the 222 unstable crystals, once symbols of fear and restriction, had become the first tangible evidence of what the galaxy would soon come to accept. Humans were different. Back in Nova Haven, Mara placed the final crystal into a delicate, handcrafted pendant and handed it to a young human apprentice, a boy with wide, curious eyes. "We make beauty from chaos," she said softly. "That's what we do." The boy held it carefully, feeling the subtle hum, the responsive pulse, and the soft glow that seemed to echo the rhythm of his own excitement. In that moment, he understood what the humans of Nova Haven already knew. Danger could be shaped. Chaos could be transformed. And human ingenuity could make the impossible real. Across the galaxy, other species took notice. Scientists and engineers who had once dismissed humans as impulsive began to study them, trying to understand the principles behind the transformation of unstable energy into something controllable and beautiful. Traders and adventurers whispered of human colonies where forbidden energy was harnessed for creation, not destruction. And even within the council, a grudging admiration began to take root. The 222 crystals, once objects of fear, had become symbols of human innovation. The galaxy had attempted to contain them, classify them, and restrict them. Humans, in their typical fashion, had ignored the warnings, experimented boldly, and revealed a truth the galaxy could not deny. Where others saw danger, humans saw a canvas. Where others saw instability, humans saw potential. And somewhere deep in the laboratories of Nova Haven, among humming crystals and glowing lattices, the humans smiled quietly. They had not only defied expectation, they had proven something far greater. That in the vast, infinite expanse of the galaxy, there was no limit to what humans could do, no barrier too rigid to challenge, and no fear too great to transform into beauty. The galaxy was watching, and the humans of Nova Haven had made it impossible to look away. The days that followed marked a turning point, not only for Nova Haven, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. Word of the humans' audacious achievement spread faster than light across interstellar networks. Where once humans had been seen as unpredictable, reckless, and almost laughably reckless in the eyes of other species, now they were spoken of with cautious awe. Across dozens of star systems, whispers of the crystal's transformation became stories, and the stories became legends. On Tarsus, IV Nova Haven hummed with life. The once small laboratory of Mara Quinn had grown into a sprawling workshop filled with apprentices, miners, engineers, and artists. Every corner of the colony vibrated with purpose, creativity, and innovation. The 222 crystals, previously classified as unstable and dangerous, now pulsed gently in their settings, responsive to the touch, movement, and even emotions of their human bearers. Light bent and shimmered across metallic lattices. Harmonics floated through the air, and the subtle resonance of life intertwined with the crystal's energy. Mara had become more than a metallurgist. She was a symbol of human ingenuity, a living testament to the principle that fear could be transformed into beauty. She demonstrated a small pendant to a group of young humans, holding it close to her chest. The crystal glowed in synchrony with her heartbeat, shifting color subtly as she moved her hand. A young boy, no older than 10, reached out to touch it. The crystal responded to the child's innocent curiosity with a soft chime, almost like laughter in vibration form. Mara smiled. "This is what we do," she said softly. "We make beauty from chaos. We shape what others fear. That is human nature." The galaxy, meanwhile, had no choice but to watch. The council had convened in emergency sessions, debating the implications of human experimentation. Some factions demanded strict oversight, arguing that this precedent could lead to unforeseen consequences. Others, however, began to recognize the potential. If humans could handle what was once unmanageable, if they could transform danger into beauty and chaos into purpose, then perhaps humans were not a threat to the galaxy. They were its wild card, a force of innovation no other species could rival. News vessels and diplomatic envoys traveled to Nova Haven, curious observers eager to witness the phenomenon firsthand. Representatives from species that had long dismissed humanity as impulsive and unpredictable now marveled at the demonstration. They saw bracelets that emitted harmonic pulses when gestures were made, pendants that glowed in rhythm with the heart, and earrings that seemed to sing subtle melodies that could only be heard by those attuned. And though some struggled to understand the science behind it, no one could deny the effect. Humans had done the impossible. The 222 crystals, once feared as instruments of destruction, had become instruments of wonder. They were not weapons. They were not hazards. They were art, life, and energy made tangible, shaped by human hands. And with each creation, each pendant, bracelet, and earring, humans were silently declaring something profound to the galaxy. Fear is only a boundary. Curiosity is only the first step. And ingenuity, the willingness to try what others will not, is what defines a species. Mara placed the final crystal into a delicate, handcrafted pendant and handed it to a young apprentice named Cairo. The boy's eyes widened as the crystal pulsed softly, glowing in perfect rhythm with his heartbeat. "We did this," Mara said quietly. "We turned what the galaxy feared into what the galaxy cannot ignore." Cairo nodded, understanding in a way only a human could. He felt the pulse of the crystal resonate with his own life, and in that resonance, he understood the truth humans had long carried, that where others see danger, humans see opportunity. Where others see instability, humans see potential. And where others see limits, humans see challenges to overcome. As the observers departed, some in awe, some in disbelief, the humans of Nova Haven continued their work, creating more jewelry, refining their techniques, and exploring further possibilities. Other species, initially skeptical or fearful, began to approach cautiously, curious to learn, eager to understand. The galaxy had begun to recognize a simple but undeniable fact. Humans were not bound by the same rules as other civilizations. They did not fear the unknown, they embraced it. They did not avoid danger, they transformed it. From that day forward, whenever humans stepped onto a new world, the galaxy watched closely, some in apprehension, others in admiration. And every time a new crystal hummed in harmony with a human hand, every time a pendant glowed or a bracelet resonated, it became clear that humans were not merely participants in the galaxy, they were shapers, creators, and innovators. The 222 unstable crystals had been classified as dangerous, volatile, and uncontrollable. The galaxy had tried to contain them, to fear them, to suppress their potential. But humans had done the unthinkable. They had turned instability into expression, chaos into creativity, and fear into beauty. And in the quiet glow of Nova Haven's laboratories, among humming crystals and shining metal lattices, Mara Quinn whispered a truth that would echo across star systems for generations. We are humans. This is what we do. We make beauty from chaos, and the galaxy will never be the same. From that moment on, humans were no longer just inhabitants of the stars. They were a force the galaxy had to reckon with, a species that could take the forbidden, the dangerous, and the impossible, and turn it into legend.